Can't. All right, well, first up, I'm wearing an Aladdin Sane David Bowie shirt, and I was hoping to get some of your favorite David Bowie songs.
Most of my favorite David Bowie songs are on, were from Low, Lodger, and Heroes.
Yeah, I'd love to see you cover Panic in Detroit. That's one of my favorite Bowie songs.
Yeah, I'd love to do that as well.
Yeah. Or how about a Bowie covers album? I think that'd be really cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. Yeah, but it seems a little too obvious, so.
Now I want to get back to the very beginning. It's something that's always interested me. I've read your book. I've interviewed Steve Stewart, your original manager. I've talked to the other guys about the early days of the band. And, there's so much vague and contradictory information out there about Mighty Joe Young in the swing years. When it comes to you and Robert, there's stories that you saw him playing at a UCI frat house, and then you saw him again a year later and wanted to play with him.
Never at a UCI frat house.
Okay,
No,
so it wasn't that.
no. He used to come and watch us play at a place called Kiss the Club while we had when we were teenagers. We played there 3 times a week, and he would come and watch us play, and he'd come up and play on a song or two, and then when I decided that with my best friend and guitar player Corey Hickok, we decided we needed to make a change with the band. We got a hold of Robert and started writing songs with him.
So originally it was swing. What type of songs were you and Robert writing initially? I heard the title Drop That Funk, which I'd love to hear. It got a rise out of Robert DeLeo when I met him years back. What were the type of songs you were initially writing with Robert in swing? Do you remember any titles?
It was more Chili Peppers oriented, like early Chili Peppers oriented, kind of punk funk type of vibe.
Do you remember anything else besides Drop That Funk, or is that the only title, which is from your book? Do you remember?
No, Get Up With That Funky Feeling.
Cool. I'd love to hear these, by the way. I don't know why you don't put these out, Speaking of that, Dean came into the band in 1990 or 1989. It gets really confusing when you look at
89.
It was 89. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Finally, definitive answer on that. Replacing Corey Hickok, and the band morphed into Mighty Joe Young. It kind of confused me because there's a picture of Corey in the band playing live in 1990. I think opening for Henry Rollins or something. So
No, that was Dean. That was Dean because we were both upstairs when Henry, after we got done playing, when Henry walked down was getting ready to walk down the stairway, and Dean said, "How you doing out there?" And he said, "Why? Is someone gonna shoot me?"
Oh man, it's great to get to talk to you, get to hear about this kind of stuff. So when Dean came into the band, one story that I've heard is the first song that you guys wrote was Where the River Goes. So, and there's a demo out there that has stuff like Dirty Dog and the really funky stuff. Some people say Corey played on some of that.
Yeah, Corey played on some of that.
Okay. Now, and those are technically swing songs then?
Yeah, they were still Mighty Joe Young songs. We had just changed the name. And when Dean came in the band, the name was still Mighty Joe Young, and it was when we got signed as well. We had to change the name because of the Chicago Blues guy, Mighty Joe Young.
Yeah, luckily you didn't go Shirley Temple's Pussy. That might not have worked out so well.
No, it was there for a laugh for a few minutes.
Now, how did you guys move from the Funky Chili Peppers type?
Shirley Temple's Pussy.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Shirley Black now. Not around anymore.
Yeah, I don't think that would have worked in the politically correct times of today. But
yeah, it's unfortunate that everything has to be Disneyland.
That's where we are right now. We sit here. Now, so then you shifted into stuff like. I always bring this up when people bring up they ripped other people off. But Wicked Gardens on that Mighty Joe Young demo, Only Dying, songs like that. How did you move into then songs like that? And do you remember writing Only Dying?
It started with Where the River Goes. Dean came in at our first rehearsal, and and brought that song in. And at first it was clean guitar, then we made it distorted guitar, and it went from a Cure sounding riff into a Zeppelin sounding riff.
That's cool to hear. What about Only Dying? Why didn't you guys ever like re-record that in the future? I know the whole story about Brandon Lee dying, and so it couldn't be in the Crow. But why didn't you guys ever do a
I
studio?
didn't
version
have
of that?
it. It was written way before Brandon Lee died.
When was it written?
It was written in 1990.
Wow, 1990. It's good to get a definitive answer on that too. The SDP Wikipedia article is never going to be the same after tonight. So when did you first become familiar with some of the bigger grunge era bands like Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam? They came a little later. Alice in Chains, Smashing Pumpkins. When did you first become familiar with them? 'Cause I heard something about you discovering Soundgarden when they were on SST or something. Is that true?
Yeah, and actually on Sub Pop. And I was a member of Sub Pop and used to get singles every month. And I saw Nirvana in 1989, I believe it was, at Raji's.
Oh, so you saw Nirvana. Wow. Did you get
Yeah.
to meet Kurt or Chris or Dave? Or Dave wasn't there.
No, I was not a well-known artist at the time. Were you?
No, I was not either.
Well, not that many people could have been
Did I
there.
ever get
So.
to see him? Back then? No.
Then
Well,
what?
we used
yeah.
to play Raji's all the time.
Yeah, I went to Raji's a lot. Yeah.
I don't think I was alive.
Saw Red
yet,
Cross
so.
at Raji's.
Yeah, now the only venue we got
Oh,
around here
sorry.
is the Observatory, where I actually saw you a few years ago. It was your Christmas show. So then, talking about the grunge bands, this always pisses me off when I read it. What were your thoughts on being compared to some of them later, and some of the stuff with Pearl Jam and stuff like that?
In the early days, it didn't matter to me so much because I felt it was like the first real movement in rock and roll since punk rock, and it tapped into socio-political connotations and pop culture, and it just had a vibe. I mean, it influenced fashion. I mean, it was a huge movement. But after that, like,
Everything.
I wanted us to be a band that changed, and we changed from Purple to, from Core to Purple, and then Tiny Music especially. We made a garage sounding album.
And Shangri-La Da, most experimental.
Oh yeah.
Totally, like I play songs sometimes, like say a song for sleeping or something like that, or Hello It's Late. After playing Dead and Bloated, people don't even think it's the same band.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty sustained power.
Or Bipolar Bear.
But you know what? I was gonna. I'll jump to that later. It's kind of different subject matter, but I'm gonna.
Well, it's not really because I am bipolar.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you about that right now. I was with my friend whose mother is bipolar, and we were talking about that. And I'm interviewing Scott Weiland tonight, so I was like, I really should ask him. Bipolar Bear, there's lines in it like, left my meds on the sink today, my head will be racing by lunchtime. It's one of the most underrated STP songs to me. I love that you guys played it a few years ago and you're still together, but then you didn't play it at the show I went to, unfortunately. But how do you deal with bipolar disorder, and how have you dealt with it over the years? Has it ever been better or worse? How do you deal with it?
There were certain group of medicines that I took that worked for a long time until they stopped working, and then I started taking a different regimen of medicines, and I was on too high of a dose, and it affected some of the shows that I played, but I'm on the right dosage now.
Now, how do you think, you hear the stories about the fans and stuff, and I want to get your side on this. How does it affect, like say, your personality, like when you're talking to people or meeting strangers, like fans? Do you think it affects that at all? Or?
Well, I don't like meeting strangers anyway.
Yeah.
I'm just not that kind of guy.
Same here. My anxiety was through the roof the last few hours before coming here. But so right now you're in a better place when it comes to dealing with it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's really good to hear. Moving back to the early '90s, when you were in SDP, you played with Jerry Cantrell a few times. You played with Alice in Chains in 2007. You did Angry Chair when they were doing the initial reunion.
Yeah.
Yep. Are there any other collaborations you'd like to do with any of your contemporaries? Is there anybody
I'd
that's
love to play with Jack White.
Oh, Jack White, that'd be great. I think especially with like the style you're going for now, with like Blaster and the garage rock, that would really sound great. Or or maybe Dan Auerbach from the Black Keys.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, the
really
Black
cool.
Keys would be great.
Yeah, he's producing the new.
awesome.
Yeah, he's producing the new Cage the Elephant album.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You mentioned Cage the Elephant in your book. Are you a fan of them?
Yeah, I am a fan of them.
Yeah, I mentioned to
They
them.
opened
yeah,
up for SDP for a while.
Yeah, I mentioned it to Matt Schultz a few years ago that you thanked Cage the Elephant in your book, and he was really honored. He thought it was really cool. Now, going into your relationship with the STP guys, this is where I really want to get your side of the story. I spoke to Eric Kretz a couple of years ago, and he talked about what a great friend you were during the early days of STP and how you two co-writing the lyrics to Plush together in a hot tub was a perfect example of that friendship. When did that friendship with the STP members start to, go downhill, and when did it become more of like just a business relationship? I'm really curious.
Well,
to your take on that.
it was really when I was asked to be on the cover of the magazines, and it wasn't the band, and the band got really jealous about it, and so things kind of changed from that point on,
Yeah.
slowly.
Right. Yeah, I
But
know.
surely.
Right. Yeah, I know. One thing you mentioned on Howard Stern was, I think in 1996, some tiny music shows were canceled, and the band held a press conference announcing, "Oh, our singer can't show up." Do you think that was a turning point at all in the relationship?
I think so, especially because Dean was a fucking junkie as well, and not admitting to it.
Now you kept going back to STP. You guys, after the hiatus where you made 12 Bar Blues, which I love, you went back for number 4, and
Well,
then
12 Hour Blues was my solo album.
Right, I know.
My
Yeah,
first
I
one.
know. Then after that, I trust me. Yeah, I love that album, Mockingbird Girl. I wish you would play more of that live. I love that record. But
Different band.
Right. Different band. But you went back to STP for number 4, and then that fell apart a few years later. But then you had the reunion. Are you taking a picture? Okay. And say Scott Weiland and the douchebag.
No.
Okay.
Just saying, take a picture.
Okay, cool. But you went back to STP a few times, especially for the reunion in 2008, which was just a huge tour, and you were going through a lot at the time. Velvet Revolver was just ending. There was just so much going on. Do you think you guys should have reunited in hindsight, or do you think the relationship wasn't healed at that point?
I think we should have reunited. I just don't think that we should have tried to produce our own album, especially when, Don was asking to produce the album, and he was so frustrated because no one in the rest of the band would listen to any of his ideas. So he finally went back to the Stones and did that Exile on Main Street reissue.
I was going to mention that, actually. You just keep going into the things that I was going to talk about. I love the self-titled STP album, so no matter what went into it, like, I love that album. I think Take a Load Off could have been a hit, some other songs too, and I love Maverick. That's one of my favorite songs you've ever
I
written.
think Maver's a great song.
Yeah, and it's never been played live, unfortunately, which bums me out. And Between the Lines, it's just a really catchy album, and for a lot of these veteran bands that come out, the songs, they don't have the hooks, but for that album, you guys did, and I really loved it. But when I talked to the other guys a couple of years ago, they mentioned, you were recording, or at least working on your vocals separately from the band, and the DeLeos were producing the album. They said that album took a lot of work.
Everyone was producing the album.
Yeah, Eric's studio, Bomb
Yeah. I mean, those guys were doing their part of the production, like doing the instrumentation, and I was at my studio, Lavish, with Don was producing my vocals.
So where did you guys get crossed up there? Was it that you wanted Dawn to be the producer and the DeLeos were insisting on producing themselves?
Yeah, they were insistent on producing themselves, and I didn't feel that was a good idea. There's too many producers in the band, and we had Don Was at our disposal, and we should have let him be the leader.
Now, do you think that did a lot to hurt the relations of the band at the time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you think if Brendan O'Brien maybe had been producing it, it would have turned out better? Why didn't you guys go with Brendan?
That was the idea of the rest of the guys. It was always something that we voted on, and they didn't want to work with Brendan.
Now, do you think in hindsight, obviously you had your point of view, and it does sound like having an intermediary producer would have probably, worked better with what was going on with the band at the time. But, do you have any regrets in hindsight? Do you think you guys could have worked it out better when it came to the decision of making that album? Do you think maybe
if we would have gone with a producer, just like we did in all the rest of our records with Brendan, and where he was the guy that if it came down to it, he had the last word.
Now, another point of contention about SDP during that era was the set list. It was the greatest hits set list, especially as we went into the last couple of years of the reunion. And at least from what I've read, that you've said you wanted to work in some more deep cuts, freshen it up.
Yeah.
What went on there? Because
I also wanted to do the 20th anniversary of Core and do that entire album in entirety. But they didn't want to do that.
Why didn't they want to do it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Now, did you guys have conversations about that? I know there was some meeting at somebody's house.
Yeah, there was a conversation, but they didn't want to do it. They said, let's do Purple or let's do the 21st, reunion of fucking Core. And it's like 20th works, 21st doesn't.
So they wanted to combine the tours then, or they
Yeah.
just wanted to do Purple, and then you ended up doing that tour. I don't know if you can talk about that, but what led you wanting to do it?
Because we didn't have an album yet, and so we decided to, a combination of the two albums.
Now I've got to ask you, I think that, I really like Blaster. Especially my favorite songs on the album, like Amethyst, Circle, stuff like that. But that Purple at the Core tour was not. There were some fans that weren't big on it. What do you think went on with that tour that led to some criticism of it?
I think because we had a 5-piece band, and that 5-piece band had 2 guitar players, and the main guitar player, who really was the most impressive, was Jeremy Brown, and he was only the rhythm guitar player in that band.
Yeah, I've been a diehard fan of yours for a long time, and I recognize the faces in the Wildabouts. Before it was even the Wildabouts, like Jeremy and Tommy. But once Doug left, it seemed like it got a lot better, at least musically.
It became
Jeremy
a lot
was great.
Cleaner.
Yeah,
it became a lot more.
There was a lot of noodling over the
more,
songs.
There was a lot more space between the notes.
Right. Yeah.
What do you have to say about that,
Yeah,
Tommy?
the space was good. The space opened things up, Made it got heavier.
Yeah, I think that just coming from a fan's perspective, that's really improved the shows, because you never know if somebody's gonna be tired or something, but everything always sounds great musically. Let's get over here.
We almost done.
Yeah, a little bit more. Do you wish you could tour less? Does it burn you out having to tour so much?
Not really. It burns me out missing my wife. And that burns me out, but she comes out every now and again on the road.
She's the band mom.
Yeah, she is band mom.
Takes care of it. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned on Howard Stern a few years ago about how I don't know if circumstances have changed, but you had to tour a certain amount, make a certain
Well,
amount
you
of
have
money.
to
Yeah.
because rock bands don't sell.
Right.
I mean, like
Billy Corgan talks about
STP
it.
and fucking Velvet Revolver, sold, 6, 7, 8 million records at a time.
I know.
And that just doesn't happen in rock and roll anymore. No, Taylor Swift might smell a million records.
You should have pushed The Man I Didn't Know to the country crowd. Maybe that could have been a big crossover. Another song I love. So you have to tour a lot, and you do like a ridiculous amount of shows. Like I look at your contemporaries, I cover like Chris Cornell, and sure they tour, but it's not as crazy as you when you look at the amount of dates. Do you think there's anything you could do maybe to do less shows maybe and maybe monetize them more so that you could tour less, like maybe something like an acoustic tour or something where the fans maybe help out the set list?
We're really not. These songs aren't really about acoustic in nature. The only thing we could really do is license more songs to films and TV to come up with, a financially better situation. But other than that, the only way to make money is tour.
Now,
be a road dog.
Now I got to ask a little bit about Velvet Revolver. One thing that somebody told one of my reporters recently, I don't know if this is true, was that 10 years ago, your bandmates in Velvet Revolver who were in Guns N' Roses were offered hundreds of millions of dollars, and there were rumors of a reunion at the time. I think around this time you wrote that letter to Axl. It was pretty funny. You called him like a wig-wearing fuck or something. It was pretty amusing. I don't know if you remember it. It was pretty funny.
I remember a little bit about it. Yeah, there was a little going back and forth between the two of us at the time, but I think that Guns N' Roses are getting back together.
Now, why do you think they're getting back together?
I've just heard that.
Yeah, we've heard rumors.
Oh, so here's a scoop. I was going to ask you, the next question was going to be, who's more likely to play Slash again, you or Axl Rose? So do you think it's Axl at this point?
I think Slash is actually a bigger star right now than Axl.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Slash is a brand. I mean, Slash is a...
He's the hat.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you too about the Velvet Revolver thing. You said the band was reuniting a couple of years ago. That's always I talked
because
to Dave Kushner about it too.
We did a show
Yeah.
together, and there was talk about us getting back together, but Perla, Slash's ex-wife, kind of put the kibosh on everything.
Oh wow, really? That's surprising. But why did you say definitively? You did. I actually even remember the outlet. It was ABC News Radio. You did an interview at the time. You said the band was getting back together and writing a new album. Like, were you like? Did somebody tell you it's gonna happen?
Not writing a new album, but as far as getting back together, I thought at the time that we would get back together and do a tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dave Kushner said there was a little miscommunication at the time between that when I talked to him. Just a question about Blaster. There's some pretty emotional stuff lyrically on there, like Circles and Amethyst especially. Those are two of my favorites. I feel like with the right push, they would do well on radio. What was your inspiration?
I think Circles would be great for a film.
Yeah.
For an indie film.
Yeah. Why did you... I love the song. Why did you choose to use auto-tune on that? I'm curious. Like, what led to your decision to use that for the effect?
It's usually
was it
a harmonizer.
Oh, so it was a harmonizer.
Yeah, it's a harmonizer.
Okay.
Not auto-tune.
Okay, then that'll dispel that myth, is that's what a lot of fans say.
No.
Okay, cool.
No
Then another myth
auto-tune.
dispelled. Okay, great. So what was your inspiration lyrically behind those songs? I listened to those songs and they still have like the emotional resonance that your older stuff does. But sometimes you listen to some of the, the other 90s artists as they age, it doesn't really have that. But how are you still able to get that emotion down lyrically, especially this late into your career?
Well, a lot of it had to do with my relationship with my wife and the producer, Rick Parker, that we had, who was a huge friend and played in bands with Black Onassis here.
Yeah, I was in a band called Sparkler with Rick. But we brought Rick in. I've always worked with him, and he had such a good vibe. I knew they would be a perfect match. His bedside manner in the studio would work perfectly.
Yeah, and he brought Jeremy to really advance his helped him bloom exactly.
Oh, another thing I just remembered about Blaster was, I don't think anybody's asked you about this, James Iha played on Blue Eyes, I think. How did that work out with James?
Yeah, he wrote part of the song, and then we finished writing the song, and then he wanted to play on it, so he came in and played on it.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. It was cool.
He's a cool guy, very nice.
Yeah, I've interviewed him. I've interviewed him and Corrigan. Very different personalities. It's hard to see how they played together, especially, you know. Now, where do you see yourself going the next 5 to 10 years musically? Is it your goal to, to get back to an arena level, maybe with the Wildabouts, with, the right amount of hits or the right amount, or with, another SDP or Velvet Revolver run? Or another super group? Is it your goal to get back to that
I'm not
level,
interested in another super group. If there was a tour for SDP or Velvet Revolver, I would do that. But this is my band. This is my band. This is where I want to be in arenas. And I think we write great enough songs to be able to put us back in that place. We want to follow the path of like Queens of the Stone Age.
Right, yeah. You've always had the passion for your solo career, even when you were still with Velvet Revolver near the end with STP. Do you think, your love of your solo career so much, do you think that might have affected what was going on with STP? Or maybe a future reunion, maybe not. Like, do you think if you guys got back together, you or STP and Velvet Revolver, it'd be for the right reasons at this point, since your heart's in the Wildabouts?
I can't say about Velvet Revolver, but I can say about STP. They had, 3 bands besides a band that I was in with them. I had Magnificent Bastards, and then I had my own 2 solo albums, and then we broke, Well, no, that wasn't a band of mine though.
Right.
I wish those guys the best of luck, and I hope they do great. But I was told by my management at the time, Carl Stubner, that all I had to do was for the money was to write the melodies and write the lyrics and sing the songs, and I was lied to by him.
Now, when it comes to SCP at this point, like, do you think about the legacy at all? Because, like, at this point, Chester's in the band. Just judging off
He's not in the band anymore.
Chester's not?
No.
What do you mean?
I've heard he's not in the band anymore.
Really?
But they played recently with him, I think.
It was a couple weeks ago. They only did one show. They canceled a show before that. But so you don't think he's in the band anymore?
Well, he's got a band that he gets paid $700,000 a night with, and with STP, the brand's kind of falling apart, which is a shame.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that. Do you think the legacy can be repaired, at least during like your guys' lifetime? No matter what, 100 years from now, people are going to love those songs. They're just timeless. But do you think the legacy can be repaired during your lifetime? Maybe without a reunion, with a reunion?
If we did a reunion tour, it could be.
But what do you think you would have to do to make it different from the previous run to really end it on a strong note? Do you think there's a way to repair that in the relationship with the guys?
I don't know. That depends on them.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. That was amazing.